So hello, welcome to this tutorial. Today we're gonna create a GraphQL API. So the first thing, I'm gonna initialize the project. So npm init/ui to create a new nodeJS project. And now we're gonna install some dependencies. So I'm gonna need the Express because it's a server, the GraphQL itself, and the Express GraphQL, which it's a library that will help us to handle Express in GraphQL. So after that, I'm gonna create a file. I'm gonna call it index. You can call whatever you want, and I'm gonna just import our packages. So I'm gonna import the Express, and also the GraphQL, and the Express GraphQL. So for the GraphQL, we will just need the build schema, and for the Express GraphQL, we're gonna need the GraphQL HTTP. So to create our API, we need first of all to specify the types of of our objects. So for this example, we're gonna create just a variable. We're gonna call cars because we are going to fetch cars, and then it's gonna be an array of objects, and we're gonna have name and price, and also ID. Now the next thing we have to do is to specify the type of car. So to do so, we can create a GraphQL schema. So I'm gonna create a function. I'm gonna call it schema, and it's gonna be equal to our build schema from GraphQL. And it's a function, and it takes a string as a parameter. And here we define our GraphQL stuff like types or queries or mutations. So the first step here is to define the cars type. So I'm gonna type in car. It needs to be capital, and here we can say the types. So we have ID, which is int. We have name, which is string, and also price, which is also int. Now that we have our types, we need to specify the queries, because the first thing we're gonna do is just show the data on the screen, and for this we need to set up the query. So then we say it writing type and query, and here we can create a function. So you can name it whatever you want. I'm gonna name it cars, and it's gonna return car. But notice that in this case we have just one car, but I want to make it a list, so we're gonna create another one car here, and so in this case we are fetching just one car, but we are working with a list, so we need to say it's an array. Oops, it's an array of cars. And now we have our type, we have our query. So the next thing here is to create the resolvers, which are the functions that we're gonna handle everything for us. Actually, we need to write the functions, but we need to pass through the resolvers to actually return or manipulate data. So we're gonna call it root, and it's actually just an object with a lot of functions. And here we created this function so we can use it here. And if we had a database, we would do the fetch or the queries here, but in our case we just have this variable, which is a mock database, so we're just going to return the cars, and that's pretty much what we need to work with the GraphQL. But now we need to connect our Express with our GraphQL, so I'm gonna just use the Express and create a variable called app. You can call it whatever you want, that's all. It's gonna be the Express module, and now I can access it and use. Here I'm saying that we're gonna use our GraphQL at this endpoint, and now we can call this function, and it receives an object as parameter. And here we specify the schema, which is our schema, but the name is the same, so you can pass just schema, and also the root resolver, which is root. And I'm gonna turn this on the GraphQL to have the screen playground. And now the next thing is to listing to our Express application. So app.listing, we are going to listing on 3000 port, and we're gonna have a callback just logging the address for us. And now we can use the node index and go to to our endpoint. So you can see that if you go to cars like so and search for ID, you see that it's returning the IDs, and we can actually choose what property we want, and that's pretty much the GraphQL. So we also can have parameters. For instance, I'm gonna create a query just car, and it's gonna return just car, and here we say the parameters. So let's say we are trying to fetch by ID, so we can pass this, we can pass the ID, and it's gonna be int. And here in our resolvers we can have a car, and we can, instead of returning the full list, we can just return the cars.filter find. And here the callback eating.id is equal, and now we need to get the parameter. So the parameter basically goes at the first argument of our function. So here we have args, or whatever thing you wanna name it, and here we can access the ID. So if you initialize the server again, we should have the car, and the ID. So if we pass, for instance, 1 and get the name, we get just the first, which is the Ferrari, which is the ID 1 at our list. So other thing we could do is mutations. So mutations are used when you want to write data. So to do a mutation, we need to specify a type here of mutation. And for instance, I'm gonna call this one add car, and it's gonna return a car. And now we can go to our resolvers and write the function for it. So ID car is gonna be, so we can say that we need the ID, the name, and the price to create a car object. So we need to specify the parameter here. So ID is int, name is string, and price is int. And here in our resolver we get the args like the other one, and here we can just push a car to the array. So I'm gonna access the cars and push an object with the ID will be the args dot ID, the name will be args dot name, and the price will be args dot price. So after that we can return the object to the GraphQL. So I'm gonna return the ID like the same object we push to the list. So basically that's what we need to fetch data, but there's something wrong. Oh, actually that's the wrong thing. So now we need to type mutation, and inside of it we can add a car. So we got ID, which will be 3, name will be what name, Fusca, and price will be this price. So if you go, you can see that we added this new car to our list. So if you go and fetch again for all cars, we got twice. Why twice? So let me just try to add it again. So if you go and use the price like so, we added this new item to the list, and if you fetch it again, and we have just one. Probably I added 2 times, but you can see that we already have a database, not database, we have just the mock variable, but we are doing the reading and the writing stuff and the fetching by ID. So that's the basic of GraphQL, and the next episode we'll be talking about the authentication part. So I see you on the next one, and thank you for watching.